Good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming in so promptly. My name is John Allen, Technical Manager for Bipney Bows Business Insight. Those in the audience will probably more fondly remember MapInfo. I came from MapInfo and we're now part of Bipney Bows. I'd like to thank, first of all, Jeddah Municipality and specifically Dr. Abdulatif Al-Hati for inviting me here again to present to you. And I'd like to speak really on some of the themes that the other speakers have addressed, as well as hopefully introducing a few new ideas in terms of how other disciplines would approach similar types of analysis that can be used, in this case, for disaster planning and management. So I'd like to begin just by thinking about why this topic is so relevant at the moment, and then pick up on a couple of the similar topics that, again, some colleagues have mentioned previously. First, around data access, vitally important in any time of crisis. And secondly, some tools and techniques that can be used for hydrology, and specifically the analysis of urban flash flooding and simulation and prediction and prevention of the effects of flash floods in an urban environment. And lastly, I'd just like to look again at some of the techniques that we may have seen pioneered in other industries, I guess outside of public planning and public safety, industries like retail and insurance that are also big users of geographic technology, and have really pioneered other types of analysis that I think we can look to employ when planning for disasters and planning for our response to disasters. So, in terms of recent events, we all watch the news, right? We all know very, very well what's happened in the likes of Hurricane Katrina in the US, of course the Haiti earthquake that happened recently, as depicted here by the BBC, and of course the catastrophic flooding that hit Jeddah towards the end of last year. So we see these, and I think we see an ever-increasing use of maps and GIS in how we present this information through the media. Of course, the BBC have picked up here, and they've really started to look at the analysis of what happened in Haiti. So, the earthquake zone itself, the various rings of severity that occurred, the damage that was inflicted on various cities and various sections of the population, and what is a very poor island, and the effects were really disastrous, and everybody saw that. But I guess the point here is that while analysis is important, looking back in some ways is much easier than looking forward. This is a representation of what happened, but it's really hindsight. Were they prepared for this incident? And so I guess the point I'm trying to make today, and many of the other speakers have also touched upon, is that contingency planning is really vital. How do we look ahead, try to assess, try to predict maybe not what will happen, but how we deal with the results of natural or even man-made crisis. And of course, the reason for this is that we need to try to minimise the human impacts of these events. I mean, nobody can overstate the importance of protecting the lives and the health and the safety of citizens. And this is especially acute, I think, when these events hit urban areas, which of course was the case here in Jeddah. So, when we talk about GIS, or a very, I guess, traditional scientific approach to using geography in assessing the potential damage of flood events, for example, we talk about the need for all of the traditional components of GIS. I mean, any textbook will tell you that you need three things. You need readily available data, and that data must be of good quality. You need technology, of course, in order to put this data in the hands of users. And those users need to be educated, they need to understand what they're doing, the implications of the analysis that they create. But I think at the moment there's a real focus on empowering users to concentrate on how they interpret results, how they act on the results of their analysis. And that's hopefully will come out in some of the examples I use today. So, can't be overstated again that the importance of sharing data. An agile response to an emergency means people on the ground in the field trying to respond to a disaster and help people need to be able to access data instantly, and they need to be able to have the information they need when they need it through the right medium. And I think we're seeing recently in the last year or two really in GIS specifically, the emergence of tools, cataloging for example, and very specifically metadata, so that users understand what is available to them. I mean, quite often people know what to do with the data, but it's knowing that it exists is the first step, and understanding how they go about collecting this information that's out there. So there are standards emerging for spatial and non-spatial data. I guess we hear about this most in the form of SDIs, spatial data infrastructures. But there are technical standards which are emerging to support this. I guess the most frequently used one now is OGC catalog services. So technical tools which are there to ensure that data is shared in a standard way, so that we can understand where data can be accessed and things about that data. You know, how old is it, for example? I think the last speaker made a very good point about Las Vegas and how, you know, the age and the vintage of that data made a huge change to the way they might interpret what they saw on the ground. So understanding about the data, the vintage, and how to access it is really vitally important, and these standards are as important, I think, in terms of how we share information. You know, there is precedent for this here in the Kingdom. We are implementing this along with our partner GTT up in Medina, and trying to learn from the lessons elsewhere that we've seen of other, mostly European countries at the moment, using the Inspire standards and implementing metadata services and discovery applications for the users there. And I just want to mention in a little bit more detail about Inspire. I mean, you may not have heard of it. I guess it's very specifically a European Union initiative, which lays down the general rules about the establishment of a spatial data infrastructure in Europe. The reason I think it's relevant is that it was first conceived as a means to ensure data access in times of crisis, and actually flooding was the key use case really. Within Europe, of course, you've got lots of member states, lots of countries, divided by borders on a one big landmass, and many of these national governments or even local government agencies will use different technologies, different tools to collect their data, to disseminate their data. But you know, natural disasters don't respect country boundaries. They obviously will impact across borders. So the need was really there to standardize the data and also standardize knowledge about that data. So again, that's where metadata comes in. So that's why Inspire was first established, and it's now rolling out across the EU. And it has a few mandates. First of all, simply it mandates that metadata should be created. You know, and that's a job that no one really volunteers for sometimes. It's not the most fun part of what we do. But the creation of metadata catalogs specifically for environmental data sets is really the first step. Secondly, the implementation of standard data models, again to facilitate interoperability. We shouldn't be bound by the technology that we choose. We should be able to access data and access the information about that data, regardless of technology. Published services, of course, we need to distribute the information so that users can discover it, they can view, they can download, and then work to invoke it and transform some data.